she wouldn't see another person's point of view. So instead of me trying to change her mind, I said quite plainly, what if there was a different way? And I asked her to put herself 5 years into the future. And I said, what would your ideal life be? How would you be operating day to day? And how would you serve other people in your industry? And she came back with a long list. And I said, so you don't believe in future pacing or putting yourself into the future? She says, no, but you've just done it. So she said, okay, but what if it's all bullshit? I said, do you believe in science of frequency? She said, yes. I said, so what is quantum physics? Essentially, quantum physics is just knowing about frequency and also having the simultaneous reaction. People understand science because that's matter of fact. What people don't understand, and they're beginning to understand now, is how energy is compatible and how it matches up with our own vibration.
Welcome to the Dov Baron Show. Come for the stories, stay for the learning. Join our movement of deeply curious learners by hitting that subscribe button right now. The Dov Baron Show. It's not just another podcast, it's your passport to unparalleled insights. For the next 2 episodes, we're going to dive into the depths of human resilience and transformation with our guest, Baz Porter. Imagine turning your deepest trauma into a superpower for professional excellence. Baz has not only imagined it, he's created a system for it. You will discover how Baz Porter's journey through professional hardship has propelled him to the forefront of high-performance coaching by shattering traditional paradigms. As the innovator of the RAMS system, Baz redefines leadership and professional development, blending psychological depths with sharp business acumen to guide leaders and companies towards astronomical growth, scaling ventures to over $100 million. Each episode of the show, we feature the wisdom of global leaders, scientists, entertainers, philosophers, theologians, and journalists, from astronauts who've traveled the vastness of space to presidential candidates who are just trying to make sense of a world on the brink. We dive into the most intriguing minds. For the next 2 episodes, our special guests, stories, and insights will captivate and inspire you. So hit that subscribe button and be part of the global community today. Stay tuned as we explore transformative trauma, turning personal pain into professional power, and how to overcome personal challenges that can ignite your leadership quality and drive business success. These upcoming episodes are about thriving at the highest levels by harnessing the lessons learned from the toughest of times. Prepare to be inspired, challenged, and transformed. Ladies and gentlemen, turn up the volume and help me welcome Baz Porter. Hey, Baz.
Hi, Dov. That was quite a mouthful.
Can you live up to it?
I will do my best. Firstly, it's a privilege to be here, Dov. It really is.
Thank you, sir. So let's jump in, because where I always like to start the show is we kind of show up in the world based on our marketing and our media, and it kind of looks like we just arrived, and nobody arrives. There's a whole journey, and I'm always very interested in the emotional source code of an individual. Where did they start out? Tell us a little bit about what would give us context to understand the Baz that's in front of us now from the place of your formative years. How has that shaped and formed you?
I think going back into my early childhood, I was really different. Not because I was a different color or a different race. What I mean by that is I saw the world differently. I didn't see it as black and white. I saw it more of a 4-dimensional prospect of opportunity. But unfortunately, because I was different, it came with its own challenges. I didn't show up as well as I should do at school. I was never paying attention in class. I was always looking out the window. And because of some of this, I was perceived different. So I was bullied. And that had a later impact in my life, not knowing back then. But going back even into that realm of schooling, ADHD, all these labels didn't exist back then. You were just called thick or stupid. And then because of that, you were beat up around the back of the bike sheds.
Let's just go back to that for a minute, because you said something right off the bat that you didn't see the world as black or white. You saw it in multiple dimensions. Tell us what you mean by that, because I can certainly relate. But for the listener, it might be like, what are you talking about? So just give us a little more context in that.
Sure. I was gifted as a child, and I saw people call it spirits, people call it different dimensions these days. I know that to be more understanding of now because I study the quantum field and how it worked. But back then, I saw, coin a phrase, dead people. And it was curious to me because I knew things that people my age didn't know about past eras. I would have full-on conversations. As I grew older, I was told not to do that because you get locked up. So I shut it down. But what it actually was something called mediumship, or what I know now to be channeling. Channeled information, different dimensions, tapped into a higher form of consciousness. ADHD dialed into a different dimension, simple as that. And it set me up for criticism, but for a world I didn't understand back then. So four-dimensional for me was looking at an overview of the world, not in it. So playing witness to it, rather than going, this is what it is, black and white, I'm thick, I'm stupid. I knew the information, but asked me to give me a pen and paper and write it down. I had no chance. I had no interest in doing that.
So you had these feelings, you had these experiences, and you're bullied as a result of being, quote, different. But what was it like at home? Did your mom get it? Did your dad get it? Because sometimes we can have a parent who's like, don't worry, son, you're all right. Or we can have parents who are like, get back in the closet and shut all that down.
My mum was gifted, although she didn't tell me until very later on. And she saw the world differently. I had a stepfather who I call Dad. He was really the pivotal point in my younger years. He took me under his wing and treated me like a real father. One of my earliest memories, even before coming to school, was being shut down by my real father and told, I'm like 5 or 6 years old, don't think that, to be put back in that box. But my mum understood, but she was so afraid through her own trauma and her own experiences from my real father, she was afraid to step forward. So from a very early age, I was put in that box of shut up, do as you're told, behave, don't express what you really feel. And these boxes were stacking all the time. So I never really had an opportunity to say, this is who I am. And then I adapted later on in life to be many different versions of that because I thought that's what people wanted.
It's my language, not yours, so forgive me if it's wrong. But I would suggest that you began to morph. You became a morpher. You morphed into what was needed in the environment, but that would always mean sidestepping the truth of who you were. And so you've got a dad who's shutting you down. You've got a mom who's got her own trauma, and so she's afraid up the yin-yang as well. She's afraid for herself, but she's also afraid for you. And yet your stepdad comes along and he seems to be encouraging. Was he encouraging of that part of you, or was he just encouraging of you as a young man, as a boy?
He was encouraging me as a young man. He'd never had any kids of his own up until 1986, when my little sister was born. So he took the role of being a father, even though he didn't have any children of his own. It was a huge responsibility for him. He always knew that I was different, and he couldn't relate to me on that level. My mum could, but she was a businesswoman, and she never really had time for me. She left me to my own devices. So I created a reality for myself so I could live in that reality.
So again, this messaging of repress and deny who you are and put on the mask, morph into whoever it is. Let's take that to the next level now. Let's discuss this concept that I talked about right at the beginning, which is transformative trauma and turning adversity into an engine for professional drive and innovation. That sounds like a long way from that little boy who is being bullied at school, who is being bullied by his own father and being told to suppress himself. How do you get to this idea of transformative trauma?
That's a great question. On my travels around different places, I realized that I didn't fit in, as I said earlier, and I had to find a way to help people. I always knew I was here to help others, but I didn't know in what model or how. And I started speaking on stages, I started traveling, I started helping people, but I didn't know what coaching was back then. What I didn't know was the early start of me joining a Facebook group, helping others, was actually forming what it is I've got today. The very early stages of listening, actualized intelligence, emotional intelligence, and all of the buzzwords you hear today in coaching. But back then I didn't know what it was. And I had no methodology to put it into a concept where I could firstly help someone efficiently, and secondly, I could be a solution to a specific problem. And it was that was the unlocking key for me, to find the problem, the exact problem, and then go in and face it head on without all the fluff of coaching language in between it. As you know, doing what you do and the leadership roles that you undertake in your business and in your role in life, Everything is always evolving, but one thing has always stood very steadfast, and that's the emotions of people and how they're affected on many different levels, but sometimes we don't see what's really going on until it's too late. You mentioned earlier morphing to adapt into different environments, but what if you could actually be authentic no matter what? And that's what I was striving towards, but I lost myself in the conjunction of doing all that, trying to be somebody else to fit in someone else's box.
It makes perfect sense to me. I think, as you know, my course is called Creating Cultures of Belonging and Why Fitting In Doesn't Work. And it's exactly those points that if we're trying to fit in, we have to disenfranchise parts of ourselves. We have to shove parts of ourselves in the dark closet somewhere and only reveal what is, quote, appropriate, but that's not who we are. So there's a big jump there from being this bullied kid to speaking on stages or being in a Facebook group. What is the transition where you realize not only intuitively that I'm here to serve, that I'm here to help, but what is the realization? What's the point when you go, I've got to get out of my way of my own trauma, of my own insecurities, of my own shit, and put it into the world? Is there a moment there? Is there an awakening there? Or maybe there's not. Maybe it's over a long period of time. What was it that went, okay, I got to get out of the way and I've now got to step in? What's that transformational moment for you?
I joined the forces at a very early age, and I did a lot of stuff within the forces, and I came out 2004. I went to Cyprus for 7 years and I became a DJ. So I went from military to crazy town literally overnight, and I had sex, drugs and rock and roll for 7 years. But in the process of doing that, because I was again morphing into someone else, I became an alcoholic and a drug addict. And I became the worst version of myself. I became the person I most despised. After returning to the UK, I ended up being homeless after a relationship failed. It was destined to fail. I was a mess and was for a long time. Did a lot of damage to me internally and emotionally, but also mentally. But what happened in 2018 changed my life. So all the stuff that I'd been suppressing spiritually, all the messages, all the shit that goes with that, suddenly came up to the surface. And I had an awakening or reawakening where it could no longer be silent. So I had to step into a version of myself to serve, a serving basis. I never got things in dribs or drabs. It was like, here's the 18 by 8 and duck, or you're going to get hit. The 2 by 4 didn't apply to me. And I spent 3 weeks literally curled up at the end of my bed, crying in tears, bleeding at the ears and nose, because I had a lot of information that I couldn't process. If you know anything about mechanics or quantum mechanics and energy, this is like a massive download from the universe. And I was seeing things, hearing things that I could not possibly understand or translate. I now know that to be Sanskrit, and that's how I channeled it through Sanskrit. But it was that moment that was like, what the fuck is all this? And why is this going on? That was my service moment. That was enough of playing about, enough of being somebody you're not, as in an alcoholic, drug addict. This is your wake-up call. And I had an option to go no and try once again to off myself and go away from the planet, which I had done on more than one occasion. But as soon as I did that, I said, okay, what do you want? What do you want me to know? Everything calmed down.
So this is 2018, and we're 2024 as we record this. So 6 years ago. So let's just pull back again and sort of unwrap that a bit, because there's a lot to unpack there. Again, we've gone from this kid, the bullying, we've gone from that to the military, we've gone from the military to becoming a DJ, alcoholic, drug addict, homelessness, the breakdown, breakthrough, awakening that has your ears bleeding with the download that is actually pulling you back to the knowledge, the insights you had even as a child. That seems like you're back in the woo-woo, and that couldn't be further from coaching leaders and working with companies and helping them to get to $100 million. It doesn't seem to correlate. Walk us through that.
You're exactly right. It doesn't. This is where I had to figure out how to support very senior executives who were far away from anything woo-woo spiritual, but put it into a context that they could understand. And focusing on a result, but using natural gifts such as energy, feeling, emotion, but also observing the physical reality, as in what the hell's going on, and what's really going on, what's the lie you're telling yourself, and actually going into these questions. They gave so many clues. And then by studying a lot of the greats in the world who knew and already gained this knowledge of business acumen, and I put myself in some very uncomfortable rooms that I felt I didn't belong in, but I had to learn. I wasn't a business person. I knew nothing about running a business when I started all this, but I learned fast, and I learned by failing very quickly, but getting back up with dusting yourself off and carrying on. But one fundamental thing stood out to me was every time that I fell, every time that I learned something, the bounce back was another level. And when I started to ask these questions to very popular business owners, I was like, there's something repetitive going on here. And it was to do with the emotional components. It was to do with the questions that we were asking ourselves as leaders. And we couldn't get the answers to because we were in the problem and we were a part of the problem instead of standing back from it and going, what can I learn? And it was that learning aspect that put me towards RAMS, focused on delivery result, but by keeping the awareness of others and their vision intact, but elevating or building on that vision so I could get the best out of them without them going, well, I don't want to do that. And that's not what I want to do. Because they were looking in the version of what they wanted, not above from it. And the instrumental part of it was I could tap into a quantum field, retrieve components of information that possibly they already knew, but they didn't want to say to them, and then come back and go, well, what about this? So it wasn't I was a channel. It wasn't I was spiritual or a medium. I could just have the ability to tap in and see from a greater place where the client or prospect could not see from. I had a client a while ago who was a coach, and she was wanting to go that next level. She was already very successful, and she wasn't spiritual at all. She was about as spiritual as a brick, and she wouldn't see another person's point of view. So instead of me trying to change her mind, I offered up a different solution to her. And I said quite plainly, what if there was a different way? And I asked her to put herself 5 years into the future. And I said, what would your ideal life be? How would you be operating day to day? And how would you serve other people in your industry? And she came back with a long list. And I said, so you don't believe in future pacing or putting yourself into the future? She says, no, but you've just done it. So she said, okay, but what if it's all bullshit? I said, do you believe in frequency? Science of frequency? She said, yes, it's a proven science. I said, so what is quantum physics? Essentially, quantum physics is just frequency, knowing about frequency, and also having the reaction as a simultaneous reaction. And I went into Newton's law. She was like, well, yes. So you believe in the science of quantum physics, but you don't believe in future pacing yourself as a frequency, because this is what you are, and creating your own life. She went, oh. So I put it into a scientific view for her with expanding her knowledge and awareness, but without breaking her patterns, confident enough to open up to me and let me guide her or help meet her where she was so I can guide her to that next level. People understand science because that's matter of fact. What people don't understand, and they're beginning to understand now, is how energy is compatible and how it matches up with our own vibration. Bob Proctor speaks about this, Jack Canfield, so many others, and I know you do as well, Dov. But a lot of this is coming back into the confidence within yourself. Once I've understood that instead of trying to change someone's mind, but to empower them where they are and then build from that, it changed where I met a leader. I just have to empower them enough to take themselves to that next level. And that's what I do now.
So how does someone recognize, because you and I both know denial is more than a river in Egypt, how does potentially a listener recognize that maybe they need what you're offering? How would they get to that within themselves? It seems like it would be that there'd need to be a level of self-inquiry that may not be there in that person initially before getting to recognize, you know what, I need to get in touch with Baz.
Most people are always in a transitional point, and they are looking for something that they're not solution aware of. Most people are problem aware. We all have at some level, we know have a problem. Solution is different because it's about finding something that resonates with you right now. And people in this day and age have so many options. Then they always go for the cheaper option unless they can find envisioning themselves in the future version of where they want to get to. If everybody was the same, the life would be boring. And when we step into a leadership role, it's not often about being the perfect version of ourselves. No one ever is. I tried for so many years to make a life that I was perfect in, and I wouldn't admit failures. And I wouldn't go and say, yeah, I fucked up. Because that's what I thought I was morphing to be, is that perfect child, and it carried on through. The moment you strive for perfection is the moment you fail. The moment you strive for experience and match that experience with somebody who has the knowledge to get you to that next place, but you can relate to, not to be a best friend with, but to partner with to go to that next level. I'm my first client. There's nothing I would tell anybody else to do that I haven't done myself, whether it be morning routines, eating, fitness, business stuff, delegation, different styles of leadership. I've tried most of these things and failed at most of these things miserably. But the one thing that always was consistent was the learning experience from where I fell and then getting back up, analyzing what just happened, removing the emotional good, bad from it, what really happened to me and why did it happen. And there's countless versions of them stories, not just with me, but so many other leaders. I'm good at what I do because I failed a lot, like stupidly a lot. But I'm learning to own them mistakes. And owning them mistakes takes the power away from everybody else. It puts the onus on me to go, yeah, that happened. This is what I learned from that. And I won't go back and fail again in the same way because I did learn from it. The universe tends to work in circles. It's lunar. It's not straightforward. And it will test you again. And it will throw things at you to see if you learnt them lessons. Moment you have a resonation with something higher and you believe that you are here to do more, that's where I come in. Because not many people can go, I understand the woo-woo stuff, but I can put it in a 3D conceptuality. You go, this makes sense because I can metaphorically put it towards something over here.
I want to talk more about your RAM system and what that is and the practicality of that. We're already at the end of part 1 of the show. We'll talk a lot more about the RAM system in part 2 so that people can have a grasp of what it actually is and how to potentially step into it, at least some levels of it themselves. And if they decide they want to dive deeper, they can get in touch with you to do that. But before we do that, I want to make sure that people listening who found you very interesting, find out what you're speaking about to be something that resonates with them. How would people find out more about you, Baz, about your program, about all of the resources that you have to offer?
Sure, and thanks for that, Dov. First of all, LinkedIn is the place to go. I'm heavily active on LinkedIn every day. I don't have any other social media platforms purely because that's what not my clientele are. So if you listen to this, you're likely to be on LinkedIn, or equally find me on YouTube and you can send me a message on LinkedIn. The website is ramsbybaz.com. There's plenty of information. There's a load of free resources on there. I'm currently doing an overhaul of the whole website as well, which is interesting, challenging, and has its own concepts of, what about this? And I'm delivering more resources on there. I'm introducing apps and artificial intelligence for you to utilize within AI prompts.
So ramsbybaz.com is the main website. And of course, as I said, you'll find him on LinkedIn. And of course, we'll make sure that all the links to all the resources are posted in the show notes. So if for some reason you didn't catch it, that's okay. They'll be there for you. We're going to be back for part 2 of our delicious conversation with Baz Porter in just one click. So stay curious, my friends. Stay curious about the possibility that there is such a thing as transformative trauma and that you can turn it into your personal and professional power. We're going to be back in just one click. Stay curious, my friends. Stay curious.